It's all kicking off again for Keir Starmer, and this time the firestorm is coming from one of his own. Halima Khan, a former Labour official who worked in the party's Governance and Legal Unit, GLU, has unleashed a blistering attack on the Labour leader during a heated GB News segment. Her claims? Starmer is nothing more than a gaslighter who cynically manipulated the working class to rise to power, only to betray them once in office. And the clip of her fiery rant? You're about to see it.
Define a working person, let alone a woman, on the run-up to that general election. Labour just couldn't do it, Dawn.
And we've heard today, it's officially Small Business Saturday today, and we've heard from small businesses saying, we are not going to cope in the new year because of all the new regulations that have been brought in.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the first things that he did was scrap two-child benefit tax and decide to freeze the elderly. He's not for the working class. He never really was. I think, like I said, he played a strategic position to get into leadership by gaslighting the working class that believed him. And then they did the same thing when he won the general election. I think a lot of people just wanted Tories out, so they voted him thinking that he would represent the working class, and then he ended up betraying everybody that voted for him.
The fallout from Halima Khan's scathing remarks has reignited a series of political controversies that have dogged Keir Starmer since his tenure began. Khan, who has a long-standing feud with Labour after alleging racial discrimination and unfair dismissal during her time in the party, held nothing back in her televised diatribe. She accused Starmer of strategically positioning himself as the saviour of the working class during his rise to power, only to abandon the very voters who propelled him into leadership. Two of the first things he did was scrap child benefit tax and freeze the elderly, Khan exclaimed, her frustration palpable. He played a strategic position to get into leadership by gaslighting the working class that believed him, and then, just like that, he betrayed everyone who put their faith in him. Her words come at a precarious time for Starmer, whose government has faced mounting criticism over its handling of critical issues affecting Britain's most vulnerable citizens. Chief among these controversies is the decision to cut winter fuel aid for millions of elderly Britons, a move that has sparked outrage across the country. The winter fuel allowance, which previously provided up to £300 annually to those aged 66 and over, is now being means-tested as part of Labour's cost-cutting measures. Starmer insists that planned state pension increases of approximately £470 next year will offset the loss of the allowance, but critics are unconvinced. According to government estimates, the cuts could push around 450,000 elderly people into relative poverty and 300,000 into absolute poverty by 2030. For pensioners already struggling to make ends meet, the cuts feel like a cruel blow. One elderly woman, speaking to the Mirror, described her heartbreaking reality. "I'm sitting in one room with one small heater, wrapped in a blanket and with a hot water bottle. The rest of the house is cold." Another pensioner added, "The rise I will receive next April does not even cover the loss of the winter fuel allowance." The backlash has been particularly fierce in Scotland, where nearly 900,000 people are estimated to be affected by the cuts. Scottish Labour is now leading efforts to force a vote on reinstating the allowance through amendments to the Social Security Bill. However, insiders suggest that Starmer is unlikely to reverse course, fearing it would undermine his broader economic strategy. As if the winter fuel scandal weren't enough, Starmer's government is also under fire for policies that small business owners say are crippling their ability to survive. Labour's recent budget, spearheaded by Chancellor Rachel Reeves, includes a series of tax hikes that Tory researchers claim will saddle the average shop with £7,576 in extra employer national insurance contributions and business rates. For a small chain of 3 shops, this figure skyrockets to £32,001, a burden many business owners say they simply cannot bear. Mike Parry, a broadcaster on GB News, painted a dire picture during a recent segment, warning of utter devastation on the high street. He argued that Labour's tax policies are pushing small shops to the brink of collapse. It's now virtually impossible for a small shop employing 2 or 3 people to make any sort of profit. They make a loss. Therefore, I see utter devastation on the high street of small businesses going down. While Reeves has highlighted measures in the budget aimed at supporting small businesses, such as an increased employment allowance of £10,500, Critics argue these initiatives pale in comparison to the financial pressures being imposed. Adding to Starmer's headaches is dissent from within his own party. Yvonne Gagan, Labour leader of West Lancashire Council, recently delivered a blistering critique of Starmer's housing policy, which promises to build 1.5 million homes by the next election. Gagan called the target impossible due to land restrictions in her area, which is predominantly A1 farming land. She warned that building on such land could jeopardise the nation's food security, a point that resonates deeply with a public already concerned about rising food prices. Currently, our farmers supply 60% of what we eat, Gagan explained. We need to be told with Starmer's plan to build on Greenbelt how much that number would go down. It's a dangerous idea to reduce our homegrown food, as we already know from energy supply, the danger and cost of relying on our friends across the sea to keep us warm. Her remarks have emboldened other Labour Council leaders to push back against Starmer's housing agenda, creating yet another rift within the party. Meanwhile, the Labour leader is also facing a significant challenge from outside his ranks. Recent polling data has revealed a shocking surge in support for Nigel Farage's Reform Party, which has overtaken Labour for the first time in history. The poll shows Reform at 24%, Labour at 23%, and the Conservatives leading at 26%. The numbers represent a seismic shift in British politics, with Farage gaining ground not just from disillusioned Tory voters, but also from Labour's traditional base. The results are particularly alarming for Labour MPs in marginal seats, many of whom now fear losing their positions in the next election. Nigel Farage, fresh off a triumphant appearance on BBC's Question Time, has capitalised on the discontent with Labour's policies. His confident demeanour and sharp critiques of the current government have resonated with voters who feel left behind by mainstream politics. Farage's ability to connect with the public, something Starmer has often been accused of lacking, has made him a formidable opponent. Even Labour activists are beginning to question Starmer's ability to lead the party to a second term. Many argue that his government's focus on austerity measures and tax hikes has alienated the very voters who propelled him to power. Some insiders predict that if Labour's poll numbers continue to falter, Starmer's leadership could face a serious challenge from within the party. For now, Starmer remains defiant, insisting that his policies are necessary to address the £22 billion black hole inherited from the previous government. However, with public anger mounting and political opponents gaining traction, his position is becoming increasingly precarious. What do you think? Has Keir Starmer completely betrayed the working class? Is his leadership doomed? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for all the latest twists and turns in this explosive political drama.